Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm joined today by Peggy Hill, CEO at the Peggy Hill Group. I'm Nick L'Ecuyer, Principal Mortgage Broker with Mortgage Wellness, and this is your weekly update. Every week, we're going to talk about interest rates, the market, fixed interest rates, variable interest rates,
home prices,
and home prices. So why don't we start by talking about fixed interest rates?
All right, my favorite subject.
Do you remember where they were in January, Peggy?
I do. They were just under 2%.
Take you back, right?
Take me back.
1.99%.
The good old days.
That's right. That was just this year. That wasn't last year. That wasn't the year before. That was this year. Now, fixed interest rates started to increase in February.
Right.
Now, what happened with home prices in February?
They peaked.
Right. So fixed interest rates were driving up. Home prices were also driving up. And it was you that told me that fixed interest rates and home prices don't travel in the same direction. They're both going up at the same time, right?
Right.
So that's a recipe for disaster.
It is.
Now, what happened after February was interesting. Typically in the mortgage business, we see, fixed interest rates increase by 0.05, 0.1, maybe 0.25 over the course of like a 6-month period. We saw 30 and 40 interest rate increases since January. Basically.
This year?
Yeah. Every single week, sometimes twice a week, we would see fixed interest rates increasing. Now, sometimes those fixed interest rate increases were as much as 0.5%, 0.5%. It's really interesting because, I've joked that, let's say I did a pre-approval for you, Peggy, and I said, no problem, I can get you 4.75%. Sounds great. I'll call you in the morning, and, I went to bed. I would wake up the very next morning and interest rates have increased by 0.5%. So at times, and I know we've talked about this, I felt like a stockbroker. I had to have all the monitors on, and the interest rate increases and the updates were just constant. Now, about 4 weeks ago, we saw bond yields decrease.
I knew it would.
For one of the first times all year.
Yep.
And the net result was that fixed interest rates, you ready for this? They
went
decreased. Down. They decreased, right? By 0.3 to 0.5%. Now, nobody was talking about this because, of course, prime rate was going up. Everybody was focused on the Bank of Canada announcement. So what we actually have is variable rates going up while fixed rates were coming down. Now, there's something really interesting about that because as the gap narrows between variable and fixed rates, more people are choosing fixed rates.
I should hope so.
What do you think is going to happen with fixed rates as that happens?
They're going to go up.
They're going to go up. Supply and demand, right?
That's
They're
it.
Down right now. More people are taking fixed rates. They're becoming more popular. If the simple rule of supply and demand prevails and most people take fixed rates, those fixed rates will go up. They can only go up, right? So all in all, let's look at fixed rates historically, because I know this is something that you love to chat about.
I obsess about it.
I know you do.
Because it's a direct correlation to house prices.
This is interesting. This is interesting that you say that. So commonly, like for the viewers, Peggy will reach out to me and say, Nick, what are interest rates today? And I'll tell her, and she'll say, when was the last time in history that interest rates were at that level?
That's all I ever want to know.
Right. Now, you think there's some correlation to where home prices should be at.
I do. In
relation to where interest rates are. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is we'll put up on the screen for the viewers where interest rates were in 2008. It's 5.89%. In 2010, 5-year fixed interest rates fell down to about 3.79, largely due to the financial crisis. They stayed low into 2013 at 2.84%, 2016, 2.44%. 3 years later, they crept up a little bit. 2019, a very critical time to identify, 3.19 in 2019. And then what happened?
And in 2019, we had a really healthy market. Yeah. Everything was great. Home prices were good. Interest rates 3.19. Nobody was complaining about it. Yeah. And then COVID hit. Now, we know where that led us, right? January of this year. To a very dark place. Now.
Right. It's true. High home prices, low interest rates, right? But the net result is the interest rates that we're seeing now, right? They're trying to lower inflation. And one of the ways they're doing that is by increasing interest rates.
That's all they got, man.
Yeah.
That's all they got. Pick on me.
It's their one trick pony, I suppose. So 5-year fixed interest rates today, let's say for a first-time home buyer, 4.79%.
Right.
So,
and unfortunately, that means that prices should probably go back to somewhere around 2008, 9. And the reason I say that is because it's affordability. Now, do I believe prices are going to go back to 2008, 9 levels? I don't.
Okay.
Because there was, cost of goods go up, inflation, appreciation.
That sort of thing, yeah.
I don't believe that. Do I believe we're going to get back all the gains we made during COVID? 100%.
You think that values will go back to 2019, 2020 levels?
2019.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
And the only reason I believe that, not because I wish it. I don't wish it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make common sense that when we have rates that are in the high 4s and 5s, that we can have home prices in the 2022 levels.
What if they increased amortizations? What if they?
That's all we're waiting on. We're
Right.
waiting on something.
Yes.
The government's going to have to give us something.
Yeah.
If they increase the amortization, then it would obviously shrink the payments, which
Right.
would, free up some buyers to buy.
So we ran the numbers on this just the other day.
Yep.
I was doing a meeting for your team. We ran the numbers on, I think it was a $600,000 townhouse with taxes. There was, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 available in Barrie right now, probably
we've got
for sale.
tons.
Right. You couldn't find one in February.
No.
Right. I remember doing a video with you and I stopped and I said, Peggy, if anybody has a townhouse that they're looking to sell, and you're like, please call me. Please. I have 100 buyers.
I was begging people to sell their homes in February.
Yeah.
Begging, literally.
Yeah.
I did a TV commercial asking anybody that's retired to please sell their home and bank their money. And I actually had emails come back to me saying I was discriminating against older people. And it's like, that couldn't be further from the truth. But the one thing when you're dealing with professionals, if they don't have the knowledge to let you know that you're at the top.
Well, maybe the candid nature to their message, the transparency, the honesty.
I know.
I mean, just conveying brutal truth, really.
The truth.
Yeah.
The truth was we all knew in February we could not keep sustaining these prices.
That's right.
There was no way.
That's right. Yeah. And even the people that sold cashed in Ontario and moved out east.
Of course. That made sense.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Nope.
It's not going to happen anymore because out east is becoming more expensive.
It is.
And Ontario, obviously, we know what's happening here, right? So it's interesting. Like what Peggy says about increasing amortizations for a first-time home buyer, you're maxed out at a 25-year amortization.
Right.
Now, when you and I got into the business around the same time, you a little before me, the maximum amortization was 40 years for a first-time home buyer. And I can tell you that more than 9 out of 10 people would take a 40-year amortization.
I wish it back. I wish it back.
Yeah.
I want it back.
Now, again, going back to the townhouse scenario, we said if someone buys that average price townhouse in Barrie, $599,000 with taxes, their monthly payment was about $3,500 a month.
Too much.
Now, if we increase the amortization from 25 years to 30 years, if the government allows this, it would decrease that payment by almost $500 a month, bringing the payment to about $3,000 a month.
And at that point, it's starting to get a little more palatable.
Yeah.
But I don't even think 30 is enough.
35 would be better, obviously, because that would bring your payment down to the same, let's just say $400 or $500 was true, then you'd be $2,500 or $2,600.
And that would be less than rent,
right?
Which would entice a first-time buyer to buy.
You got it.
And the problem with our first-time buyers, and a lot of people always ask me, why are you so laser focused on first-time buyers?
Yeah.
And it's because, as you see right now, without the first-time buyer, the rest of the market is held hostage.
Yep.
Nobody is moving.
Yep.
No, like the middle can't move. If the first-time buyer doesn't buy, I can't move the rest of the chain.
Up.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Investors, I mean, there's a lot to be said for it, for sure. So let's really just look at this decrease that we've seen in fixed interest rates over the last month. I really wanted to quantify it for the viewers. Okay. So we started at 5.25. We've gone down to 4.75.
Thank goodness.
About 0.5%. Now, you haven't heard about it in the media. I mean, viewers, tell us below. If you've heard about it, drop a comment because people aren't talking about it.
They're not, because everybody's so focused on that variable.
And decreasing home prices.
Bank of Canada.
Right. So the decrease in interest rates from 5.25 to 4.75 will save a first-time home buyer about $142 a month. Let's call it $150 a month. But there's also something else that's very interesting to be said about this, which is the stress test. I mean, the nasty stress test. Everybody hates it. Consumers, realtors, mortgage brokers.
Everybody hates it, yet it's probably the only thing we have that saved us.
Do you remember when it came in place? I mean,
I cried.
Like, yes.
Like a baby.
The stress test, for those that are watching, decreased affordability by 20% overnight. If people were shopping for a $600,000 home, they're now shopping for a $500,000 home. A $500,000 home buyer was shopping for a $400,000 home. And unfortunately, the people that were shopping at that time for about maybe $400,000 to $450,000 were pushed out of the market or to a different geography. They were shipped to, say, Aurelia or Midland from Barrie. If they were shopping in Bradford, they were shifted up north, like those sort of things, right? Now, the stress test says that you have to qualify for your mortgage at the actual interest rate you're going to get plus 2%. So when interest rates were at 5.25 just 4 weeks ago, we had to qualify buyers at 7.25%. But with the decrease in interest rates, we're able to qualify them at the lower rate of 4.75 plus 2%, 6.75. And that in itself will allow a first-time homebuyer to qualify for $30,000 more.
Right.
And that's important.
It's important.
Especially when there's great deals to be had on homes. We're going to go through one in a sec, actually one of your listings.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about variable rates.
Yep.
So variable rates are nasty, right? You know, and now they had their heyday. They really did.
They did. In fact, I think anybody that had a variable rate for the last 10, 15 years
always won.
They were laughing.
Always won. Statistically.
However, there comes a time everything has its day, and that day is done.
I wonder, because like it's historically, like we used to say there's no point ever in history where a variable rate has cost more than a fixed rate.
Right.
So there's a point in time currently where variable rates have increased. But let me give you an example, okay? Before last week, if a buyer had taken a variable rate and had a variable rate of prime rate minus 1%, right? If you take a variable rate, what you lock into is the discount from prime. Usually, like in this market or the market that we're just coming out of, it was prime minus 1%. Well, at the start of the year, prime was 2.45%. Minus 1 meant that Peggy had an interest rate of 1.45%.
Exactly.
Pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome.
Now, before last week's increase, it was actually just a little over a week now, prime rate was 4.7%. Minus 1 would have been 3.7%.
And more importantly, you only needed 5.75 to qualify with the stress
test. That's right.
And that's where I think a lot of people got, into the variable because they were low enough that you add the 2% and it was much lower than the fixed.
It's a very real conversation. What Peggy's saying here as well. And like, if a first-time homebuyer came into our office and said, we want to get qualified for a first home, and I'd say, you're qualified for a $500,000 purchase price, they'd say, I can't buy for that. I'd say, well, if you take a variable rate, you can qualify for $540,000.
Exactly.
Oh, that's better. So wait, it's easier to qualify for a variable rate that's susceptible to increases than it is for a fixed rate? Yes. Now, the government obviously, they didn't know that was happening, because there's no way, they would knowingly allow, people to qualify on an easier criteria with a variable rate. It just happened.
It was a loophole.
It was
and people took advantage of it. And the government, thankfully, isn't that smart.
Yeah.
So we got away with it for a while.
Sure. So up until last week, the week before, prime rate was 4.7%. Minus 1 meant that you had a variable rate of 3.7%. People would call me and say, is it time to lock in yet? Well, when you lock in from a variable rate or an adjustable rate to a fixed rate, you lock into the then current fixed rate. Let's say that's a 5-year fixed rate. It's about 5.5% at that time. So do you want to stay at your 3.7% or lock into 5.5? The rule of thumb is if there's more than a 1% gap between the two rates, you keep the variable rate.
Right.
Now, after the most recent increase, prime is now 5.45%. It's high. Same borrower is minus 0.1 at 4.45%. They say to me, Nick, should I lock in? Well, if they're going to lock in at 5.5%, they're still 1% lower.
I can't believe you.
I know. But here's the thing. Fixed rates are heading down currently.
Right.
Okay. So the saving grace is this. If variable rates are trending up and fixed rates are coming down, there will be a point where it could make sense for a lot of people with variable and adjustable rates to lock in their mortgage.
Right.
We're heading into that. Now, short-term fixed rates are very attractive. I just spoke to a client right before this meeting. They're in a variable rate. They have a line of credit, combined interest rate about 6% right now. They can take a 1-year fixed rate at 4.5%. It's a good plan.
Good plan.
Just revisit it in a year.
Yep.
Over the next 12 months, they're going to save lots of interest, and we just revisit it in a year. Now, that borrower, if they had, prime -1, they had 1.45, then they had 1.95, all the way up, right? All the way up to where we are now at 4.45. Then they lock in for an entire year at 4.5, nice and stable there. And we revisit in a year. That's what a lot of variable and adjustable rate borrowers are doing. Now, the Bank of Canada meets 8 times a year. They just met. They're going to meet again.
For my birthday.
What do you think is going to happen for your birthday?
It's going up. They don't care about me.
Yeah. And we were running some numbers this morning, and, a 0.5% increase on a few $100,000. We were running the numbers and we're saying, does it go up by $100 a month? Does it go up by $200 a month? If it goes up by another 0.5%, for example, let's use the most recent increase. Okay. A 0.75% increase will cost a borrower $750 a year
on 100,000.
On 100,000. So let's, I put up a couple points here. The total increase for this year is 3%. That's $3,000 for every $100,000 of borrowed money. So if a borrower has a $500,000 mortgage,
right,
their cost of borrowing has gone up by $15,000 a year.
You divide that by 12, it's over $1,000.
$1,250 a month. Now, they also had the benefit of a lower rate for all through the pandemic.
Yes, they did.
1.45 and that sort of thing. Now, I know that you're very sensitive to variable rates and variable rate borrowers and increases like I am. Okay. I'll tell you who's more concerned than a variable rate or an adjustable rate borrower. You know who it is, right?
Mm-mm.
It's the borrower that has a 1.79, 1.89, or 1.99% mortgage that's coming up for renewal in 2 or 3 years, even 4 years.
I know. I've had people email me and say, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do
Yeah.
when this comes up
Yeah.
for refinancing?
That's right.
And I always tell people at the time, you have to sit down, have the conversation.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's best to lock in for a year and wait
Yeah.
for this madness to end.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 years, whatever, just to get you through the hump.
Yeah. And what those people need is really great advice.
And they do.
Right.
And
So
it's not a fear, because most
Yeah.
mortgage companies, if you're with your mortgage company,
Yeah.
chances are you're going to get renewal papers in the mail.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down. You're not going to have to requalify. As long as you're making your payments, they won't ask any questions.
And that is the case. Absolutely. And most people are also just worried about the increase in payment, the increase in cost of borrowing as well. So if you're watching this and you have an interest rate of 1.79, 1.89, 1.99, and you have questions, reach out to Peggy or myself. I'm happy to coach you through our graduation program. It's a free program. It's free advice that we give to people that are in these fixed rates. And basically, for the viewers' benefit, well, let's just explain it quickly. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, your interest rate is currently 1.99, and we expect that you're going to renew at 5%. And we look at the 2 dates, today and 3 years from now, and we look at the payment difference that's going to occur between 2% and 5% in 3 years' time. And then what we do is we suggest a payment increase program that's going to allow you to slowly and gradually increase your interest rate, increase your payments over the next 3 years so that you're ready for the interest rate to be increased.
And any payment you make
goes right towards principal.
Right to your principal. So it's not like, you're making payments for no reason. That money comes right back to you.
Absolutely. So not only are you ready for that higher payment in 3 years, if that happens,
we don't know.
It's 3 years.
We don't know. We don't know.
Right? It's 3 years.
Yep.
Right? But you're making prepayments the entire time. Like Peggy said, you're paying your mortgage down much faster than you have to and getting yourself ahead of things, right? Exactly. So if you're watching this video and you're in a fixed rate, a low fixed rate, and you're concerned about that, give us a shout. If you're in a variable rate and you're wondering about these increases and whether it's better to lock in or stay the course, also that is a very individual conversation. You can't paint it with the same brush. It really depends, because one person may have the cash flow to sustain the increases and just more be bothered by the increase. And the next person has no cash flow to withstand the increases. And that's a totally different conversation.
For sure. And I think a lot of people right now are struggling with these HELOCs, right?
Yeah.
And that's where they're really feeling it, because they could be in a fixed rate, a low fixed rate. However, their HELOC is not. It's on variable.
That's right.
It's typically prime plus one.
Yeah.
Right?
So what we do with those people in most cases is we look at a full cash flow plan. We'll take the mortgage, we'll include the line of credit, we'll stretch out the amortization, and just give them a nice, comfortable payment. Because I know you don't love to hear that people are stretching out their amortizations and rolling in debts and that sort of thing.
You know what? Right now, it's whatever we got to do to survive, really.
And you know what I know that you hate to hear more than that, Peggy, is that somebody can't afford to send their kids to karate.
I know. I mean, there still has to be life.
Right.
And a mortgage.
So there's a cash flow plan for every family, every single family.
Yep.
So that's what it's all about. So I think, let's talk about the market a little bit. Let's talk about home prices. We already touched on it. We know they're decreasing, so we don't need to go through that too much.
We've lost 5% pretty much every month since March. Yeah. So you can pretty much bank on, we lost 5% in March, 5% in April, 5% in May. So that's what we've seen. So we're down about 30% since the peak.
Interesting. And the homes hit the hardest by this decrease?
First time buyers.
What about
the townhouses?
It really? Wow. 800,000, 750, that sort of thing.
We were crazy. We were, townhomes were selling in the city of Barrie for close to $1 million. I mean, we're not Milton.
Yeah.
We are not Oakville. We are Barrie, Ontario. Yeah. So that was never going to stay.
Well, you and I had a conversation. So I bought a pre-construction townhome that's scheduled to close, I think, next year with one of the big home builders in Barrie, for example, for investment. And I think I paid $585,000 for that townhome a few years ago. And you remember we were saying, if they would have let me sell it on assignment, we would have sold it for $900,000 probably.
Yep.
I don't know what it would be worth today. I mean, it's still higher than $585,000.
100%.
So I'm very happy with that. Am I mad that I lost the lift? Yes, only because it's not my primary residence.
For
it
sure.
is an investment.
For sure.
But that is interesting. So those townhomes that were 850 or 900,000 are now
$599.
Yeah, $599.
That seems to be the magic number.
And they're all over the place.
All over. And there's lots to be had.
Lots of choice.
Yep.
Yeah. And what about the 2-story, 2-car garage, first view home in Barrie that I remember when you said to me, I got a text message and Peggy and I are good friends outside of these seminars and that sort of thing as well. And I got a screenshot of a home that I'd sold. And she said, the world has officially gone crazy. This home just sold for $1 million. Never thought I'd see the day. These homes were sold as new homes in some parts of the city for $149,000.
Yeah, and this particular one was on Hearst Drive.
You remember it, right?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. Yeah. And we did have some pink carpet in it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that either.
Yeah. And
it sold for just over $1 million. It was 2,300 square feet.
Yeah.
And I really thought the world was ending at that point.
So tell me, not to put exacts on things, but let's just spitball this. Okay?
Yeah.
So that was the start of the pandemic. That was 2020, right?
Yep.
Okay. That home in the peak of February 2022 would have hit somewhere around
1.2.
And that home today, September, October 2022, would be
$899.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yep.
Okay. So
I stumped him. Do you see that?
Yeah, you really did, actually. I didn't think you were going to say less than $1 million. So.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So, but we agree there's still opportunity in this market for buyers.
There is opportunity because at the end of the day, it's about shelter.
Yeah.
And whatever that shelter cost looks like it is what it is. So if you can't afford, if you can only afford a certain amount and you're renting a basement apartment at $1,400 a month, I say stay where you are.
Yeah.
Because this is not the time to be getting into this market. However, if you're paying $3,000 to rent a home, find the down payment and get yourself in a home.
Yeah.
Because we have dropped and nothing goes straight up and nothing goes straight down either. Yeah. So, I mean, we're kind of leveled out for the month of September. Last 2 weeks of August, beginning of September, we have seen an increase in buyer appetite, but again, nothing goes straight down.
Yeah.
So are prices going up? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we've kind of flatlined.
Yeah.
We probably, we'll only have a 1% decrease, if anything, this time around.
Oh, because we've already come down so far.
We've already gone down.
Yeah. Okay. So the point here is that buyers need to still get help. I find, especially first-time home buyers,
100%.
doing the math and finding the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to show a listing up on the screen here.
All right.
Okay.
This
Peggy,
is
do you remember this
listing.
one?
Nick's favorite listing.
I love this listing. Now that it's sold,
yep,
I probably would have bought it 3 times over.
Yeah.
It was funny. Peggy and I kept on saying to each other, like, you buy it. And she's like, you buy it. And I was like, maybe I'll buy it, but you should buy it. We both should have bought it.
I know.
Okay. So it was listed at $499.
Yep.
Okay. It sold at $440,000.
It did.
Somebody got a great deal on this.
They
now,
did.
Not only was this your listing, but this was your buyer as well. 2 separate agents on your team, right?
Yep.
One buying agent, one was a listing agent. Need to see that come together. Now, there was no basement in this home. There's no garage in this home. Nice big yard with a fire pit in the back. I would paint this house blue.
Of course you would.
Red doors, shutters on the front.
I would do nothing. I would just cash flow.
Yeah,
all day
exactly.
long.
But we're talking about first-time home buyers in this circumstance, okay? So, Peggy, let's go through some numbers, okay?
All right.
Now, you remember, and I remember in February, I would say to you, we would do these videos, and Peggy would say to me, I would say to Peggy, rather, what's the average price home in Barrie? And she'd say, Nick, it's $950,000. And then she would say to me, Nick, what does a first-time home buyer need to buy that home? And I would say, under my breath, well, a minimum down payment and land transfer tax and closing costs. A first-time home buyer only needs $87,000 or something like that.
Wow, what a smoking deal.
I would say, like,
what a smoking deal.
They should all buy this
home,
I guess.
Absolutely.
But I mean, who on earth has $87,000 as a first-time home buyer?
Absolutely
Nobody,
not.
right? Maybe, I mean, you've heard this concept of the bank of mom and dad. I've done videos on it. You can check out our videos on it. It's where mom and dad help you with your purchase. But this home is quite special in that people could actually achieve it. This one was really cool. I had a lot of fun putting the numbers together with you on this. The 5% down payment closing cost totaled just under $30,000 in this home.
Amazing.
So good, right? Now, monthly payment and property taxes are about $26.75 per month. Now, when we were doing these numbers, we surfed through Facebook Marketplace and we found all kinds of listings for homes for rent, pretty similar to this one. Now, some of them had a garage or a small basement or something, but around $25 to $26.50 a month. So we took the high end of that and we said, okay, if you look at the high end of rent, this is a really cute house, actually. It was all really nicely done and decorated inside, too. Take the high end of rent, and you look at the mortgage and property tax payment. You can own it for $25 a month more than rent.
Amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Amazing.
I know you love to hear that because for like the last, well, I was going to say 8 months, maybe 6 months of the year, first 6 months of the year, Peggy was saying it doesn't make sense, Nick.
No.
It's always been cheaper for a first-time home buyer to own a home
than
versus
to buy.
Rent.
Right.
Yes, versus rent. Yes. So we couldn't find a single scenario like that.
No.
None.
No.
For the first 6 months of the year, it didn't exist.
No.
Did not exist. So some people that might be watching this might be thinking, well, why would you buy a home now? What if it depreciates more?
What if it doesn't?
What if it doesn't? You need somewhere to live, right?
You need somewhere to live, and why not pay yourself?
Right. So I put this last point in here when we were doing these numbers to say that if they do nothing other than just pay their mortgage, they'll pay down the principal balance on their mortgage by about $50,000. And that is pretty awesome.
It's a savings account.
Right. Now, I think the 20-year average of appreciation on the Toronto Real Estate Board is somewhere around 5 or 6%. So we've accounted for zero appreciation on this home. I mean, if we accounted for 2% appreciation, I didn't include it in the numbers, I'm going to think it's somewhere around $50,000.
Right.
If we apply just 2%. Now, do you remember the days in our career when you would buy a home or our clients would buy a home and after 5 years they'd make $50,000 and they celebrated that like, man, I made $50,000. And recently over the last 2 years, if we didn't, like you and I included, if we didn't make $50,000 in 6 months, we were like, what happened?
2 months.
This investment failed.
I know.
So for a first-time home buyer to be able to pay down their mortgage without even accounting for appreciation and, put equity in their pocket, right?
Exactly.
And put equity in their pocket rather than renting is a really great thing. So our point is there are still opportunities in this market to buy.
There absolutely are.
Peggy, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Nick.
If you have questions about interest rates, fixed interest rates, variable interest rates, locking in, staying the course on a variable interest rate, or if you have questions about house prices, visit peggyhill.com or mortgagewellness.ca.